I'm Kirk Harnack. On This Week in Radio Tech, it's Chris Tobin, Tom Ray, and our guest, Gary Kline. Gary's headed to NAB along with most of the rest of us. Check it out on This Week in Radio Tech, coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiRT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is This Week in Radio Tech, episode 124, recorded April 11th, 2012. We nabbed Gary Kline. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Omnia Audio and the new Omnia 11. Big market engineers are calling it effortlessly loud. Check it out on the web at omniaaudio.com/11. It's time for This Week in Radio Tech. Hello there, I'm Kirk Harnack, your host for the show. This is the show where we talk about radio technology, and really that includes so many things about professional audio, getting things done on a practical level inside a radio station, radio studios, getting content out to listeners, and trying to do a good job of just making sure that it sounds good. Our ears are very perceptive to bad sound, and so we try to avoid all that. On the show with me, a couple of our usual co-hosts and a very special guest. Let's check in first with one of our co-hosts. That would be Tom Ray in the Hudson Valley of New York. Hey, Tom, how are you? No audio from Tom Ray.
And, you know, one of these days, I'll actually learn to hit that button. It'll be a great thing. Anyway, I was going to say, it's, thanks for the introduction. It's better than the way you normally talk about me off the air. But anyway, I'm a VP engineering at WOR Radio, New York City, and Kirk's right. I live up here in the Hudson Valley, which is about 50 miles north of New York City and about 15 miles west of West Point. So, yeah, we have to behave ourselves up here. The West Point guys come into town. No,
Tom, you're not going to be at NAB this year, are you?
No, and unfortunately.
All right. Well, maybe you can come up with some sanity, some questions while we're on the air with our NAB coverage, and let us know what you haven't heard yet and want to know from NAB.
Sounds good. I can do that.
Also with us from New York City, the best-dressed engineer in radio, it's Chris Tobin. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Kirk, Tom, Gary. I'm with the folks at CCS Music Cam, and we make codecs and IP things and video and audio. So just for this full disclosure. And it's going to be another great night, and NAB is just, days away, and we're all excited. I'm ready. Are you ready, Kirk? Gary, all set?
I don't know, but Chris, I guess I got to ask you on the air because I've forgotten to ask you otherwise. Will you be available at the NAB show on Wednesday morning for a couple of hours to co-host our NAB coverage?
Yes, 9 a.m., 9 to 11 local time, I think it was.
Yes, that is. That's it. Okay, well, good.
Yep, I opened the calendar for that. I left room. I'm
working on some guests, and I've already got about 4 guests lined up for that 2 hours. We need about 10 more. So we'll get them.
Okay.
We'll get them. And after that, after the 11 o'clock end of the TWiRT show, we're going with the live cam out onto the show floor, where we're going to hassle the vendors and manufacturers and other booths that we didn't get to hassle in the TWiRT booth.
Oh, excellent. That should be fun.
Yeah. So I might need a point man, a guy who can set up the hassle factor for the people that we're going to interview.
All right. That sounds good.
All right, now, speaking of hassle, here's a guy who just receives plenty of it, I'm sure. He's been on the show before, and I'm very pleased to welcome to our show on this episode, Gary Kline, the Senior Vice President of Engineering for Cumulus Media. Hey, Gary, how are you?
Hey, guys, how are you doing?
Good. Are you coming to us from your stealthy office in Atlanta?
I'm coming to you from my home office in Atlanta.
Ah, okay. All right.
Stealthy only when people want CapEx approved. Then we don't give out my location.
There you go. Well, Gary, thanks for being on the show, especially on such short notice. And you are one of these guys that just seems fanatical about NAB, about getting things done. You always have a full agenda, things to do there. It's hard to pull you aside for a little while. So I want to jump right into it and talk about this NAB show that's coming up. I don't know what what number this is, how many NAB shows that there have been. I've been going to these shows, I guess, since about 1984. So that's almost 30 years worth of them. Gary, what was your first NAB show? Do you remember when that was or where it was?
Well, it was Las Vegas, and my first one, I'm going to say, was probably 1990 or 91. It was the one where Reagan, do you remember when Reagan was on stage and somebody charged him on stage and tried to, I forget if they wanted to attack him or throw something at him. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Well, oh yeah, I kind of do remember that, sure.
And so my first NAB was probably, I don't know, 21, 22 years ago. And the reason I remember that, and I remember the Reagan thing, was because I was working for a radio station back in that day. Remember back before 96, you only had so many radio stations you could, your company you work for owned. So I was working for a small company back then, and my phone rang at like 5 o'clock in the morning in the hotel room, maybe earlier because we're 3 hours off from the Midwest, or we were at that time, and they called me to ask what I knew about the Reagan thing, and was I there, and didn't I see it, and they put me on the air live, and so I just kind of sticks in my head. I remember being waking up early to talk about it. So,
it's always a lot of fun when they do that at 2 in the morning and they put you on live.
You're waking up and they're like, "You're on the air live." So, what happened with the Reagan thing? Were you there? Did you see it? So that was my first NAB, long time ago.
The thing that I remember about Reagan and radio is, and I'm sure I'll get the call letters in the city wrong, but during some press conference or something when Reagan had a lot of mics around him, somebody slipped him a note, and he was only too happy to read it. He read it over briefly, then he spoke it on the note. He says, "Well, this is Ronald Reagan, and whenever I'm in Des Moines, I always listen to WHO," or whatever the call letters were. And the White House press office scolded the people who did that and said, "Don't do that again. The president doesn't do liners."
That's great. I bet if we Googled it, we could maybe find that piece of audio.
I'll bet, Burke, that sounds like a great job for you. Ronald Reagan reading a radio station liner.
Find the audio and let's play it back during the show. Why not?
That would be awesome. It's probably on YouTube. I remember seeing the stories about that. So, okay, so let's real quick go around the room with this. One of my first NABs, if not the first, I, of course, was paying for it by myself. I was a contract engineer for several years going to the NAB. It was like I was expecting this could be like a kid in a candy store. I printed up tons of brochures for Harnack Engineering out of Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived at the time. And I bought little dispenser thingies that held the brochures, and I planted these things all over the NAB. And I know that people had to be going around behind me, picking them up. And I don't mean because they were interested. I mean because I was not a paid attendee. I wasn't an advertiser. I just stuck these brochures everywhere and trying to garner some more business for my company. I don't know if it actually worked or not, but I sure had probably planted 1,000 brochures all around the place. And what was funny is, to save money, I went to Las Vegas with a friend of mine. I'll think of his name in a minute. It's David. And we went on a vacation package to go there, El Cheapo. And so I went as Mrs. whatever his last name is. Husband and wife going to NAB, vacation package, cheaper. Top that, Chris Tobin.
No, I don't think I can top that. But let me see. I'm trying to remember. NAB, where was it in 86? 86. Gosh, was it Vegas? I don't recall now. But yeah, as Gary pointed out earlier before we were talking, nobody knew who I was, and they still don't. And it was fun going around. I paid my way. Actually, I still do. Still do up until recently. I still did pay my way. But yeah, times have changed considerably since the early days. It's amazing how things have shifted.
Tom, what was your first NAB like?
Well, I was actually, it was my first real chief engineer job, and I went out with the station I was with. It was WRCH in New Britain, Connecticut. We had WRCQ as the AM, and we were building a brand new transmitter site on this 1,300-foot tower. That the antenna was going to be 850 feet up. This 1,300-foot tower, which was going up for the brand new Channel 61 that was happening in Hartford. So it was quite an exciting NAB. I'd never been to Vegas before, and never been to NAB before, and it was quite the eye opener. But Chris is right. There's been a lot of changes over the years. If I'm not mistaken, is that where radio used to be? Is that the North Hall, or is it the Central Hall?
Central Hall.
Okay, Central Hall. radio used to take up the entire central hall. And now it's kind of spread all over the place. And I mean, before they took it out of the central hall, it wasn't even occupying a third of it. It's kind of scary and sad, and but it still never amazes me how they get so many people in one place. And when you go out to Vegas, it also never ceases to amaze me how you can stand there on the Strip or actually anywhere in town and say, I want to go over there. I think I'll walk. And an hour later, you're still walking because it doesn't look that far.
Gary, has that happened to you? Has it not happened to?
Have I spent an hour walking from one place to another?
Yeah, that was just look. It's just right over there. I mean, the Hilton, not the Hilton, but Treasure Island. It's right over there. We'll just walk over there.
As a seasoned NAB veteran, like the rest of you, and I'm sure many of the people that are watching tonight, I, as a rule, allow at least an hour in between every meeting that I have. And I don't care if the meetings are in the conference or convention center, or if they're at, I don't have too many at Treasure Island, but let's say it's a meeting at Bellagio or Palazzo or one of those other hotels. I allow at least an hour. If it's to another location, I allow an hour because it takes so many minutes to get from wherever you are at the convention center to an exit door. It takes so many minutes to get to your car or to a taxi or a taxi line or a limo if you hijack it. It takes so many minutes during Vegas Strip traffic, Las Vegas Strip traffic, to get where you're going, then walk into the other building. It's an hour minimum. Now, if you're within the convention center, my rule is still an hour because, you're going from C1362 to North Hall, whatever. You get stopped by people, you run into friends, you run into colleagues. By the time you get away from a booth, stop and say hello to people, get to where you're going, find your spot, and then the person you're going to meet, is found and they come to see you. It's usually about an hour, 45 minutes minimum. It's just my rule. So yeah, it happens all the time. But when you're used to it and you understand it, and if you schedule yourself that way, you basically end up everywhere you need to be on time. But if you allow like 10 minutes between meetings, you're typically going to be late. So I don't do it. It's like the airlines. They used to, announce flight times based on air time, and now they actually allow for realistic taxi timing in New York or wherever you happen to be. And you know what? Your flights generally arrive on time. At least they appear to, because nobody played with the numbers. So that's how I work Vegas.
Yep, sounds good. And my number one, it's Bob Holowenko in the chat room is asking tips for newbies. It's Bob's first trip. He's been a guest on the show. It's Bob's first trip to NAB. If you haven't been to Las Vegas before, remember, you're in the high desert. It is dry. It is dry there. If you don't do what I say, you're going to wake up in your hotel room the next morning and your lips will be so chapped and your throat so dry. Bring chapstick. And keep some water by the bedside. Buy bottles of water, have them by the bedside. You'll wake up in the middle of the night going, "Hey, I'm so dry," and you'll want to get a refreshing glass of water right away there. And drink lots of water because you'll get dehydrated and not know what's wrong with you.
Do not wear new shoes.
Oh yes! Oh my goodness!
Wear new shoes. Wear good, old, comfortable shoes that you're used to, that your feet feel good in. You wear new shoes, you're going to have blisters, and you're going to be limping the whole time.
Tom couldn't be more right. He's exactly right. If you wear new shoes that you're not used to, your feet are not used to, you're going to have the blisters on the bottom, you're going to have blisters on the back. That is absolutely one of the best tips. I myself don't wear new shoes for that very reason. I think the water tip's a great one. And I think another thing that as a newbie you need to know is you probably won't see everything at the NAB convention if you're there for 2 days. Don't kill yourself. Don't blame yourself. Don't get mad. And try to be as creative as you can about who you're going to see and what order. Look at the map and try to figure it out. You guys know, you could get lost in South Hall and lose a whole day or day and a half there. So you really need to be organized. If you're there for 3 or 4 days, you probably have a pretty good shot of seeing at least all of the key booths and vendors that you wanted to, and have enough time to potentially run into some other booths and vendors that you didn't even know existed. I mean, that's part of the lure, I think, and the fun of NAB is not just what you know and who you know, but the things that you run into or you bump into, you're like, man, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that product existed. I didn't know that company did that. That's amazing. So you need to leave a little bit of time for that too. Be my recommendation.
Good idea. Well, what about Gary? Now, all these engineering sessions that go on there, and don't they start on Saturday? Or maybe the PREC starts even on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's engineering sessions. Engineering starts earlier than even the weekend, as I recall. I'm not in public radio, but
I think it's Thursday.
I know a number of vendors who go out early, and I think the reason is, among booth setup duties, is for that public radio engineering conference.
The NS program from SVE, starts Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday.
Now, those, if I'm not mistaken, none of those are free, right? Those all involve registration costs.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Hang on, I'll look it up.
Okay.
So, let's see here. NAB show in Vegas.
Now, I'll promo, while you're looking that up, Tom, I will tell you this. There are presentations going on every day in the expo hall. There is an area that they just started this, I think, last year. It's called the Radio Pit. They might have similar ones for television and other industries too, but in the central hall there is this area stage called the Radio Pit, and they've asked various different manufacturers and other engineers to make presentations there. I'll be making a presentation there every day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at either 2 or 2:30 p.m. I think it may be 2 p.m. And that will simply be a shortened version of my NAB white paper presentation. So if you can't get into the to all of the engineering sessions, you can see some similar things in the Radio Pit, and that's free just with your admission to the expo hall, which was free, and some of the manufacturers still may be having some free links to that, or just a fairly small cost at the door if you register there. Of course, you probably would have had to plan to be there.
Just keep moving along.
Oh, you haven't found? Okay, yeah. I do think all the conferences cost money, maybe even kind of big money. And there are our friend who's been on the show before, Frank Foti, is doing a session. I believe it's on Sunday afternoon about this single sideband FM. Gary, are you comfortable? Could you comment on the single sideband FM technology?
Sure. What do you want to know? I mean, we are currently testing and using it in a couple of places and on a couple of stations, and our results have been positive. I have not found any reason to say that it hurts the signal. I've not been able to reproduce any distortion or overmodulation or multipath by using it. In fact, if anything, I found that in varying degrees it actually helps the signal. I mean, if it didn't help, I probably wouldn't use it, right? There'd be no reason to do it. But it certainly hasn't hurt. So we're pretty fond of it. But I want to do more testing, and I think there's probably things that can be done to perfect it on the receiver side as well. But my results so far have been favorable. I don't have any negatives so far to throw out there, and I support the work and the research that's being done. I'm co-chair of the NRSC committee that this has fallen under, the AFAB subcommittee of the NRSC. I co-chair that with Stan, and Frank's obviously a member of that, and I know that and he and I have spoken, and the group has spoken, and I think more research is warranted on it, and I think Frank feels that way. And this weekend in Vegas, I think with the other members present, and probably some of the other manufacturers of audio processing present, that will come up for discussion, and we'll see if the group wants to, get into it deeper. Right now, a lot of the work and the research has been by the various manufacturers and by guys like myself at radio stations out in the field. So we'll see. Is anybody? I don't know. I mean, is anybody on this show done it? Tom, have you probably haven't had a chance to play with it, or do you have any FM stations anywhere you could have tried it on? I don't think you do.
Oh, well, no, we've got an FM in Hartford, and no, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to try that. We're running an Omnia 6 on that station, so.
Well, anybody who's watching this that wants to know more about it, obviously you can Google it. Kirk, I don't know if Frank's got a paper up there or not. I know Bob Orband's got a paper that's been widely circulated. But there's a lot of information out there on the internet already, and so I'd encourage anybody who has interest in it to read up on it. And if anybody that's watching wants to know practically what it is or what you do, with the right audio processor and the right software or firmware in that processor, there's a toggle where you can put it in DSP or SSB mode, single sideband or double sideband. It doesn't require a bunch of equipment other than having the processor that can produce that single sideband composite signal. It doesn't require a whole lot other than you have the right box, you turn it on and you turn it off. I mean, the research and the work that'll be done will involve a lot of test equipment, perhaps NPR labs, and a whole bunch of simulations and real-world analysis, lots of diagrams and documents, all that stuff that goes along with it. But as a user, somebody watching the show that says, I've got a box that does that, or I've got a box that I believe a firmware update will allow me to do this with, all you have to do is turn it on and listen for yourself. I mean, that's one of the simplest tests. I always tell people, if you want to know how something sounds, listen to it.
Actually, there is a white paper on the Omnia website. If you folks want to look at that, omniaaudio.com, Frank's got a white paper there in the white paper section about this single sideband. Also, Gary, a few weeks ago, we had Paul Schulens from Greater Media in Boston on this show. And I'm thinking that we did show his video. He has a short video traveling a really difficult stretch of road. It's behind a hill from all the transmitters in Boston. And with normal double sideband FM baseband turned on, as we all normally have, the reception is just lousy. And in the single sideband mode, it is dramatically better. In fact, it's a bigger improvement than I would have expected. I'm not poo-pooing the technology. I think it's great. But I think this is a really clear example of how it can improve some of the worst situations. I know that other folks like yourself have seen some improvement in some areas, and that's probably that in itself is a worthwhile thing. But Frank will be giving this white paper on Sunday. I'm still looking for exactly when that is. By the way, there is also a paper being given by our own Joe Talbot from Telos. I love the title of this thing. It's called VoIP in the Real World, How I Quit Worrying and Learned to Live Without POTS. So Joe and I wrote that together, and he'll be delivering that message on Monday at 10:30 a.m. at NAB. Hey, Chris Tobin, are there any NAB sessions that you're particularly interested in making sure that you get to see or get to talk to the authors?
One of them is the VoIP. Can hold it. Oh. I have lost my connection.
I guess so. Gary, how about you? Is there? I don't know. Well, Tom's not going, so let me ask Gary. Gary, you're like behind the scenes and on panels on so many of these things. Are there any that you're going to make sure that you need to go sit in and listen in on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one, I'm obviously going to spend several hours over the weekend in Vegas at the NRSC meetings. In part because I need to be there because I'm co-chair of the SAFAB subcommittee, which deals with even more than SSB. There are AM NRSC and other things that the committee deals with. So I will be in that. I think that's important. I will be in. I'm on the board of the SBE, the national board. So I'll be in a number of SBE meetings related to that. I'm also chair of the education committee, so I'll be in that. So, as far as my time goes on sessions, a lot of that is I chop up my pie or divide my pie for NAB, will be sucked up by that. Now, I'm also hosting on Wednesday morning through the NAB, through the official NAB engineering program, the BEC, on Wednesday morning, a several-hour session that will have a lot of the EAS manufacturers and folks along those lines present. You can read about that at the NAB website if you pull up the schedule. So I'll definitely be in those sessions, and I look forward to that. I think it's going to probably be a well-attended meeting when we talk about EAS and CAP and answer a lot of questions, have a lot of great manufacturers on those committees. So, and in those sessions. So I'm looking forward to that. As far as anything outside of that, I honestly haven't planned anything because most of my other crucial minutes at NAB will be taken up with meetings and other things along those lines. So, but you never know. I may hear about something, or somebody may mention something to me as I arrive in town that I think is worthy, and then I'll, if necessary, I'll alter my schedule. As I said earlier, I personally believe, other people may have a different opinion, it is very hard to get to every booth and see everything you want to see, and it's very hard to also go and see and sit in every session there is. And it's even harder, if not impossible, to see and listen to all of the sessions and get time on the floor and see and meet with everybody you want to do. I mean, if anybody knows how to do that, I'm all ears. I wish like Consumer Electronics Show, the NAB went for like 10 days straight. Then I might have a shot at it. But then again, if it went 10 days straight, my company would probably yank me out of there after the third day.
Gary, I'm going to tease this next question for you, because this is, as an executive in broadcasting, executive engineer, where you've got hands-on, you're dealing with HR issues, you're hiring engineers, you're moving people around. Plus, you're working with manufacturers, and you're on standard-setting committees. So here's going to be my question. Don't answer it yet. I want you to think about this, because we're going to hit up Tom Ray with some Ennis information, Ennis workshop information. Gary, how do you decide what business you're going to try to conduct at NAB, because you can't do it any other way? And how do you decide what business that, I could pick up the phone, I could have a Skype with this guy, I could send an email to that company and transact what I need to transact? So hold your answer, Gary. I want to know how you set that priority, because, man, I mean, that's tough. There's so much to do and see at a convention like this. And the answer might be the same, whether it's NAB or CES. Tom Ray, you've got some information on the Ennis workshop, and that's the name of a series of workshops that the SBE puts together for engineer training. What you got, Tom?
Yes, and they do this all over the country, but what I'm looking at is on the SBE website. Saturday, April 14th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the Ennis workshop at NAB, and it says for registration, full conference registration for the NAB show. So if you're registered for the conferences at NAB, you get into the Ennis workshop. It's part of the NAB show. And if you go over, there's a link to click. You'll end up on the NAB website. And apparently there's a couple of conference packages this year. The Conference Flex Pass is actually considerably cheaper than the all conference package, because let's face it, some of the stuff you may not need to get to. So if you do that package and you work for an NAB member, it's $495, and if you're a student, it's $195.
That's $495 or $195, right?
That is correct. Or if you want a one-day pass, it's $295. So, but why you'd want to do that and just go to the Ennis workshop, I don't know. Not that Ennis isn't worth it, but when they come to your city, you typically go for $30. Or someplace in that ballpark. So,
as conferences go, we all like to complain about how much the NAB costs to go to, but I tell you what, you can spend a whole lot more for other training conferences. And I'm not trying to push going to the NAB show. I don't think I've ever paid to go. I've only been able to go to sessions when I've been a speaker at sessions or a member of the news media covering those sessions. So let's check back with Gary Kline now. Gary, I asked you about how you decide. You got just a few days there at NAB, and you got a lot of people who you probably would like to talk to, need to talk to. How do you decide what your priorities are there?
Yeah, excellent question, Kirk. And I guess one thing I'd say first is, after doing this for many years, you kind of get better at it, and you develop your rhythm and your stride. I would be lying if I said 20 years ago I had this figured out, but I think I have it figured out now. And here's what I do. Number one, there are the people that I want to see, as you just said, but there are also a lot of people that want to see me. Sometimes those are the same people. Sometimes I want to see somebody who wants to see me, okay? Sometimes there are people that want to see me. In fact, there's probably a lot more that want to see me that I have time to see, okay? So keep that in mind. So then what I do is I start inside with the givens, and I work my way out. So I know, for instance, I'm on the SBE board, and I know that meeting is, let's say, Saturday at 7 or 7:30 a.m., which I think it is. So I know I got to start there. I know I have the SBE Education Committee meeting, and I know that they're counting on me as chair of that committee to be sitting in that room when the group gets together. It'd have to be a heck of a lot of have to be a major event to keep me out of that. So I jot that down. So I fill in my calendar. I know that I'm going to be in the NRC meetings, maybe on Sunday, so I block that out. I know that my plane leaves at 8 o'clock from Atlanta Friday night. So, I block that out. I know what time I arrive. And then from there, I choose my key vendors that I absolutely know I want to see. And I may want to see them because I have important business to discuss with them. And that could be, in my position, that could be an enterprise deal. That could be, I'm going to sign a master purchase agreement with company XYZ. Or it could be, I've got a big project coming up in, Los Angeles. And, so happens it's around the corner, and here I am in Vegas, and so are they, and we'll get together. But I pick the key vendors. One reason or another, I need to meet with them. Or it may be as simple as I only get to see them once or twice a year in person, being Vegas and or the radio show, okay, twice a year. Maybe some local state show in Austin, TAB or something like that. But basically, a couple of times a year, and I want to at least shake their hand because we do a lot of business with them, and they probably want to shake my hand, want to sit down and see what's new with their company, see what's new with our company. Maybe they want to talk to me about some products. Maybe sometimes those are products that are not even publicly released. But because of our relationship, they want to get my thoughts or opinions on something, or let me know what's on the horizon. So I will pick key vendors and I will block them in. So who are those people? Oh, those are big transmitter manufacturers, antenna manufacturers, audio console manufacturers, maybe codec manufacturers. Sometimes those are the same company. I mean, Kirk, in your company, I can walk into your booth and handle consoles, codecs, and telephone hybrids. All at once. But there are other companies that we'll meet with. So I'll block those folks in, and I'll work out times in the schedule that work for them and work for me. It may also be big tower companies, people that we do a lot of business with on tower and real estate. And so I will block those in. And then by the time I do all that, I have other people to see. For instance, I have a number of engineers that are at the convention that we bring with us from the company, and I want to spend time with them. So, and I may have things that I want them to see with me, so I will block their time as well as mine to go and meet with certain people. All of my breakfasts, all of my lunches, and all of my dinners are blocked from the moment I arrive until Thursday when I leave. Literally every breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And those breakfast, lunches, and dinners are meetings with vendors or other groups or companies that want to meet with me that I think it's worth spending my time with. And the dinners, by the way, those dinners are very special because that's where all of our contingent that travel with us from the company all get together. So every night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night, and to a degree Wednesday night, all of my guys are at a dinner, and we're all getting together and talking and chatting. And occasionally I invite special guests to those dinners. So they're usually sponsored by a vendor, but then I may invite some other engineers from outside the company that we consider family, or contract engineers that do a lot of business with us that we consider family, one of the family, another engineer, just like any other engineer, and we'll invite them along. So my breakfast, lunches, and dinners are blocked, key vendor meetings, committees or other, the Wednesday NAB thing that I mentioned earlier on EAS and security, I block that off, the things that I know I have to be at. And then, believe it or not, I do my best. And then we have internal company meetings. I have meetings with CC attorneys, communication attorneys. I'm in meetings with the CEO of our company, the COO of our company, our FCC consultants, various meetings scheduled throughout those days on and off to discuss projects and signal upgrades and spectrum improvement and, any number of things that go on in a company. Remember, with 572 some odd radio stations, law of averages at any given time, we have a number of spectrum-related projects in the works. And so, or acquisition targets and projects, right? There's no secret there. That's what big radio companies do. And so I'll have these internal meetings. By the time you take everything I just said, it looks like Swiss cheeses, a couple of breaks each day for maybe an hour where I don't have anything. And what I do then, Kirk, is I try to leave those open for ad hoc, meaning I just walk the floor, I bump into somebody, or a last meeting needs to get scheduled, and I need a hole to do that. But when it's all said and done, from the time I arrive, 10 o'clock Vegas time Friday night, until I leave at 3 p.m. on Thursday, literally from 7 in the morning until probably 11 o'clock at night, officially, my time is booked. And then after 11, well, you know what that is. That's hanging out at the bar, talking to the other engineers. A couple of times during the NAB, I've been known to rent a limo and take a few of my guys out to the Hoover Dam just because it's a crazy, stupid thing to do, and they walk around and we come on back. And maybe we'll do that this year. I don't know, but I try to leave a little time to hang out with the guys, and that's really it. I mean, that's what I do, and that's how I do it. I start from the inside in with the knowns, and then I work my way out. And I probably am booked. I don't know. By 3 weeks out from the convention, most of that is done. You can't come up to me a week or a day before the convention and hope to have a lot of time. And like I said, I leave a few holes open, but there are just a very few. If you're not booked several weeks out, or even a month or two out, depending on what time of the day it is and whether it's a lunch or a dinner, then there's probably no hope. At least in Vegas. Doesn't mean we can't get together and meet somewhere else, but that's how my time is spent. And I go back to 20-something years ago, my first NAB. I had to pay my own way. Nobody knew me. Nobody talked to me. I could roam the floor all day. And I'm not so sure sometimes that wouldn't be fun. But
that would be a nice thing to return to.
It's a little different now, but I'll tell you, and I think somebody said this a minute ago, the NAB, I think you did, Kirk, I mean, the NAB is quite an experience, and it lasts all year until the next NAB. Anybody that's watching this that hasn't been to one or hasn't been to one in a long time, I absolutely can't stress enough how wonderful it is and how great it is. And if you do nothing but walk around and just shake hands and meet people and just listen to the conversations that take place in booths, and through osmosis, you get energized or re-energized, or you learn something new. I mean, even if you don't attend all the sessions, even if you don't attend any sessions, and you just walk the exhibits because all you could do is get a free exhibit pass, which is all I could do. It was very worthwhile. In fact, so worthwhile that every year, and I know other radio groups do this too, so by no means am I the only guy to do this, but every year I pick a handful of engineers in our company who would not otherwise get to go to NAB, who are, put in either a lot of hard work or they're up-and-comers, and I give them an all-expense-paid trip to NAB to create that spark in them, because that's how much I believe in it. I take some of my money and my budget, and I spend it on guys who might not otherwise go. In other words, not the regional engineers, not my corporate engineers, not the folks that normally go, but somebody out of, in fact, I am our engineer from Ann Arbor as an example. Ann Arbor, Michigan might never expect to go to the NAB. And he's going to get to go because I think it's important for his growth and development. And ultimately, it'll come back to, it's a return on investment. And he'll come back. He'll be more energized. He'll be more educated. And, I can't imagine that doesn't come back and help him. But then, because of that, help us. It's a return.
Hey, Gary, are you planning on going to the radio luncheon? They do that every year, I think, on about Tuesday or so. And the keynote speaker, I wonder if Leo's going to be there. The keynote speaker for this year's radio luncheon is Donny Osmond. Of course, he plays Las Vegas, so he's right there anyway.
No,
you ever go to that?
Because I'm booked, but I saw that. I think he was a late edition, wasn't he? But I did see that, and but I won't make it to see him speak. But it'll be interesting. I wonder what he's going to talk about, and whether it'll be something that he's crafted that's relevant for radio. I mean, I don't think he still does it, but he had a syndicated radio show. Does he still do that?
I don't know, and I knew that he did, but I don't know if he still does. If my wife was going, she'd be swooning. My wife got to meet him on Broadway in New York one time after a show. Holy cow, what a swoon! And Bob Uecker, Bob Uecker, he's being inducted into the NAB Broadcasting Hall of Fame during the radio luncheon. Was Bob big on the radio? I only know him from TV.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would say that pretty much anybody we know on TV seems to have started their career in radio, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Wallace. Seems like everybody is in radio.
By the way, in technology, in engineering side, engineer Paul Brenner is going to be receiving the NAB Engineering Achievement Award. Does anybody on the show here know Paul? I don't know Paul personally.
I know Paul. Paul's a great guy. Paul's a excellent engineer, and I thought it was great that he was chosen for that award. He's done an awful lot of work to improve HD radio data over HD. He's big, and he leads and is president of the BTC, which works with navigation data over HD, and he also lives in Indianapolis, which I think is great because I spent a lot of years. Kirk, that's where you and I met. It was Indianapolis, so late one night in the middle of the night, but. I know him. I don't know if any of the other guys on the show know him, but yeah, I'm glad he's going to get it. I hope I get to see him out there so I can congratulate him personally.
That'll be cool. Good to see that Paul. Paul is actually now he's the president of the Broadcaster Traffic Consortium. It's a partnership of 16 radio companies throughout the U.S. and Canada, and they are formed to distribute traffic data via FM RDS and HD radio. So it's good that those are there's good solid use being given to those services to help folks driving cars. Let's see there, and there's more about the NAB show we're going to cover here in a minute. But you know what? We're going to take a break for a moment and hear from our sponsor, which today is Omnia Audio. Are you the owner of an Omnia 11? Well, if you are, there is a software upgrade headed your way. The guys, the developers, the R&D guys at the Omnia Labs, they have been working on this for quite some time, and it's being shipped to you. Just so you'll know, it's the last update that you'll get on a CF card. After that, the updates will be the normal way through the Ethernet port, through uploading new software to the Omnia 11. Now, have you tried an Omnia 11? I got to tell you, it is unbelievable what you can get done with an Omnia 11. If you're looking for a squashed sound that just squeezes the life out of music, you're not going to get it. The first time I heard an Omnia 11 on the air, I didn't know what it was. I was driving into Cleveland, Ohio, where the mothership is, where Telos, Omnia, and Axia are. And I was in a rented van, and I was punching around, and I punched up a rock station. I believe it's WNCX. Hope I have the call letters right. And I heard the end of that Little Steven garage rock band show, whatever Little Steven does, and it just sounded amazing. It was so clear. I thought, wow, man, Corny. I bet Corny's been over there and really tweaked up their Omnia 6. That just sounds amazing. Well, then they went from that into a station ID, and this is about midnight. I'm driving in from the airport to the hotel, and they played an ID, and then they went into a Fleetwood Mac song. I think it was the one, Tell Me Lies, Tell Me Sweet Little Lies, that song. And it sounded like a remix. Everything was so absolutely crystal clear. And I just thought, I gotta ask Corny Gould. I was going to see him the next morning. What is going on with WNCX? So I got in the station, and Corny says, yeah, that's an Omnia 11. I said, well, dang, I've never heard one before. It was amazing. Well, it wasn't a month later that Jim Armstrong, who's one of the sales reps for Telos, Omnia, and Axia, Jim and I were in another rental van. And, I mean, nothing special about this radio. We're in a rental van. We're driving across Michigan. And we punch in. We know that there's a station up in Lansing that's using an Omnia 11. So we're a good 70 miles away. So we're in the fringe reception area. We punch that station in. We hear the end of the song. It sound pretty good. The announcer comes on, and I forget the call letters. I'm sorry, I don't know what they were. But he said his little blah, 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 thing that they, little station ID, the liner between songs. And it was amazing how good it sounded. I'm driving. Jim and I look at each other, and our jaws just like this, because it sounded that good. If you haven't tried an Omnia 11, I would invite you to contact your Omnia dealer and try one out. The technology that's gone into the Omnia 11 to make it sound so clear and so loud without sounding like it's trying to be loud. That's the amazing thing. The distortion, the audible distortion, is just gone. It's hidden. Corny and Rob Dye and Frank Foti figured out how to hide intermod distortion under other stuff and get rid of a lot of it, and what was left, hide it. So you don't notice it, you don't hear it. All you hear is the sweet, crystal clear sounds of the audio that you want to hear. And it prints plenty loud on the dial. Hey, our guest Gary has tried one. I've got one here in the office. I'm going to put it on one of my stations when I get back from NAB. And I would encourage you to try one out. The Omnia 11, check it out on the web at omniaaudio.com/11. Just the number 11. All right, guys, we're talking to Gary Kline. He's our guest. We're also here with Tom Ray from the Buckley Broadcasting Stations in New York and other places, and also with Chris Tobin, who is president of Musicam CCS Musicam here in the U.S. So glad to have all you guys here. We're talking about the NAB show that starts in just a few days. The engineering conferences begin, actually, I'm told now on is it Thursday or Friday. And with the Public Radio Engineering Conference, they always meet there before the show starts. Then the NAB's Engineering Conference, including the Ennis workshops. And by the way, there are NS workshops put on by the SBE in different cities all over the U.S. I'm speaking at one in El Paso, Texas in May. So if you can be in that area, I'd love to meet you and give you the whatever I'm going to be talking about in May. I think I've got it written. And then the expo starts actually on Monday morning. It goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Las Vegas. So with all that, Tom Ray, while Gary was talking, you found some NS information that maybe we ought to explain what Burke had put up on the screen, or if you can throw it up again. What is this NS all about? And Gary, you're on the SBE board. Maybe you can tell us a bit about this too.
Well, what the NS Workshop is, Kirk, it's put on by the SBE. It's an educational opportunity. Many times they come to a city, like we've done it in New York a couple of times, and normally there are some common sessions, and then you normally break out to TV only and radio only sessions, and then come back again. These are people who are in the industry, either with like a transmitter manufacturer or, for example, Steve Lampin, who we've had as a guest here on This Week in Radio Tech, from Belden. And the idea, it's not a sales pitch, even though you've got someone, for example, from Nautel or from Harris or from Belden as your as the presenter. They're not there on a sales pitch. They're there on an educational mission. And as you know from having Steve here, I mean, he can talk for hours about cable, and you'll just sit there and soak it all up, and you'll learn something. They try to make their presentations a little bit agnostic. You know, when HD radio started, there was a lot of HD radio stuff. When digital television came in, there was a lot on digital television and how it works and why it works and how to implement it. And what we're seeing on the screen right now is a listing of all the topics that'll be discussed at the NS Workshop at NAB in Las Vegas. And I'm particularly interested in the one that says the tube sound, fact or fiction. But unfortunately, I won't be there. I'd love to see that presentation by Jerry Whitaker. And up here, for example, it says click here for abstracts and biographies. Well, that'll tell you really what what each session's about, and about the people presenting the tube session here.
Jerry Whitaker had an article. Jerry had an article about this recently in I want to say in Radio Magazine.
But they're a lot of fun to go to. You meet a lot of people, especially in Vegas. You meet a lot of people. But even if you do it in a local chapter or a neighboring chapter, you just meet a lot of the people who you don't directly work with, but you work with every day, because you're all at competing stations, and you're all doing the same thing, and you get to share stories, and it's a great way to spend the day. It really, really is, and it's worthwhile. You learn something.
So for more about NS Workshops, you can go to the SBE website, sbe.org. Gary, what do you know about NS Workshops? I've participated in a number of these, giving non-sales technical talks, usually about the practicality of how to get something done. Tell me about NS Workshops and what goes on at these things.
I think Tom just did a great job of explaining it. I mean, if anybody's received a flyer from their State Broadcast Association, the IBA or Indiana Broadcast Association convention. I mean, from time to time, NS Workshops will be offered in spots even outside of the NAB in Vegas. That's my point. If you look at what's on there, and I think Tom, again, did a great job of explaining it. I mean, if you want to learn about antenna design, HD radio masks, any number of topics that are relevant to us, there are things covered off on IT, things covered off on cable. I mean, it's really great information and a great way to learn. And I agree. I mean, these manufacturers, they obviously have a lot of knowledge about this, so they speak about it. I don't think it's as much or even a propaganda campaign or an attempt to sell. I think it's really an attempt to educate people, and based on that information, you can, perform your job better, and maybe make even a better decision about what to buy and how to do it if it's a session that has to do with something that has to do with purchasing something. I've seen sessions on leadership and management, and those may have nothing to do with buying directly, but they just have to do with you and becoming a better manager. So I think it's great. I highly recommend it. If I had more time and I wasn't booked in other things, I'd probably spend more time, in Vegas watching them. But I'll probably catch those someplace else where things are a little bit more calm. And if you're an SBE member, of course, you get some credit for attending those as well in terms of your Tom. I don't know if you mentioned this, but for your membership and for your renewal, your points.
Oh yeah, you get as part of if you're certified in SBE, as I am, I believe as Chris is, Kirk, you might even be certified as Gary most likely is. In the old days, when you took an FCC licensing test, you took the test as long as you didn't get in trouble and renewed the thing, you had a license for life, but there was no incentive to learn, to continue the education. With the SBE certification, in order to become recertified, you have to have a certain amount of points and a certain amount of, points in various categories. And an NS Workshop qualifies as continuing education.
Yeah. Yep, good value there. Hey, Chris Tobin, you ever been part of an NS Workshop?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the ones we've hosted here in New York City. As Tom mentioned and Gary, the NS Workshops, NAB, any local regional conventions you can attend and meet people, both from manufacturers, from people who are consultants, and just your fellow colleagues, competitors or not. I still think is probably the best way to continue your education, grow, develop, understand, and just be able to do stuff out of the box and learn what's going on around you. And as Gary pointed out, NAB, I have to do it at least once, if not twice. Can it be overwhelming? Absolutely. Is it something worthwhile? Absolutely. Do you get a chance to do face-to-face talking with folks that design the equipment you may use or maybe have the opportunity you may look to buy? Absolutely. There's no better way to do it than the NAB. But you do have to be organized. So, as Gary pointed out, you have to have a schedule of events of what you're doing and timing, and make sure you use your time wisely. So what I do is I take a little black book with me, and I just write in it and keep notes, and I also make all my schedule appointments and keep it with me. That's how I know to get around and timely get from point to point. But putting an hour between appointments is probably about the best way to do it. There's a lot of walking and a lot of people you will meet and see, and twice a year you get to see them, NAB Vegas and NAB Radio.
I'm looking here at past NS Workshop that was held in Tennessee by the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters. I mean, look at some of the topics. FCC broadcast enforcement. I mean, who wouldn't be interested in hearing about that? With a representative from the FCC. HD radio power increases, voice over IP for broadcast talk. Kirk, you did that one. Integrating intelligence in all facets of the broadcast facility. Broadcast tower failures, causes and cures by Dave Davies at Electronics Research. I mean, those are just some examples, but if any of that sounds interesting, and I think it probably does to all of us, that's great stuff. And they also have stuff for TV. Broadcast imaging technology, state-of-the-art. Gigabyte cable for audio and video applications, 10 gigabyte cable. I mean, there's stuff for radio and TV for everybody. And that NS already took place, but that's an example of just some of the classes that you can attend. So it's really, and it's not very expensive. I mean, it's a great value. And it is true. You do get to sit next to a lot of guys you work with or from your market or nearby markets that you either know and haven't seen for a while, or you've heard of, I've heard of so-and-so, I never really got to meet you. Well, it's great to finally meet you, that kind of stuff. And you never know really where those connections will lead to, too. So to an extent, less so than it is an education event, I think there's something to be said for it being a networking event, too.
Hey, and I just remembered that if you're not registered to go to the various sessions, and I would dare to say that probably the majority of our audience is not registered to attend these sessions. They cost plenty of money, and maybe you're not going to the NAB. Well, on the TWiRT show, the special edition on Wednesday of next week, it's going to start at 9 a.m. Pacific time. That would be noon Eastern on next Wednesday, the 18th. We're going to have one guest after another. Some will be manufacturers, inventors and people who understand the gear, but others will be folks who are speaking at the show. For example, Frank Foti is scheduled to be one of our guests. He'll give us a quick update on the single sideband technology. I want to get Hank Landsberg to be on our show. Bill Sachs, I don't know if Bill's going to be at the show or not. I think he is. Bill and maybe his wife, Kim Sachs, could join us for the TWiRT show. So you can see, and Jeff Detweiler from Ubiquity is also going to be one of our guests. So if you can't attend, for example, the HD Radio 101 session that's all going on Monday, April 16th, they're going to talk about plenty of HD radio stuff for managers and owners and then for engineers. If you can't attend that, well, then Jeff Detweiler will give us a recap of some of the high points of that session on Wednesday on our TWiRT show. So a lot of value and benefit should be in store for you by watching TWiRT next week. Whew, okay. Oh, yes. I also wanted to find out, Gary, there's this area that they call the Startup Loft. Have you ever been to that?
I have not been to that. I know what you're talking about. I've not been to that. So maybe in my spare minutes as I walk through the floor, I'll get to see it. It sounds interesting. Are you going to be there?
Yeah. Well, I'm Skip Peasy, who unfortunately could not join us on the show. He's going to join us on an NAB wrap-up show on a future episode. Skip sent me a link to some of the companies the startups that appear in the show. And hey, maybe most of these companies won't be here next year, but you know what? Probably at least one or two of them will if they offer services that broadcasters and listeners or viewers really want. There's, for example, a company called Parazio, which is multi-camera support systems, obviously for television. And most of these are for television. One called Other Screen, one called En Route, Playtunes Music, a company called VizTool, and one called CreaStream, as in create, CreaStream. Or maybe it's CreaStream. I don't know, probably CreaStream. And StereoBank.com, which you'd think would be an audio company, but no, it's 3D stock footage. StereoBank, very stereoscopic vision. Then there's also something called the International Research Park, with people like NPR in there, other companies like Fraunhofer, CRC, IMDA, in this technology of the future, in this research park. Hey, has any of you guys ever been to the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus? No? Always looks like a lot of fun. I'd love to go through this thing.
I can't say I have.
I've seen it at so many shows and just never have taken the time to go in there. It's the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus. If you're there at NAB, hey, I suggest you run through that. Maybe we can run through it together, compare notes. Guys, we're going to have to break off our show pretty soon. We'll give it around for comments here at the end, but I want to remind you of a couple important things on the schedule. Every day at the NAB show, this Radio Pit, yours truly is speaking there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 2 p.m. in the Radio Pit. That's free with just Expo Hall admission. Ham Nation, a popular show here on the TWiT network with our friend Bob Heil. That show is going to be done from Las Vegas Tuesday at 4 p.m. They've asked me to be a guest on that show, so I'm looking forward to that. The TWiRT show is going to be Wednesday from 9 to 11. We're also going to be roaming the hall Wednesday from 11 to 1. So, hey, it's going to be it's going to be 4 hours worth of Kirk Harnack and Chris Tobin and whoever wants to join us for radio technology there. And then there's the TWiRT meetup. We're doing a TWiRT meetup at the Telos booth on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Now, the Telos people don't know this yet. So we'll try to have some we'll have some refreshments on hand, but if you want alcohol, you'll have to wait for the Bob Heil party an hour later. So the TWiRT meetup Wednesday 5 p.m. at the Telos booth, and then the ham reception starts Wednesday at 6 p.m. with prizes galore, otherwise known as the Bob Heil party. Tom Ray, last comment.
No, if you're on your way to NAB, you're in for a heck of an experience. And hey, great way the camera just kind of froze on me there. No, you're in for a heck of an experience. You're in for a lot of education, and especially if you've never been to Vegas before. Oh boy. But enjoy yourself, wear comfortable shoes, and go with an open mind and learn a lot. That's all I can say.
Chris Tobin and Gary, you guys ever go to the Barry, Michigan luncheon on Tuesday?
I don't know if I'll be able to make it this year. I've kind of booked up solid on Tuesday.
Gary,
same with me. I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm pretty booked. Tuesday is probably one of my heaviest days. Chris, I can't believe you're not there already. Who's setting up for you?
Oh, no, our setup will take place on Saturday. So we can't set up too early. The NAB has rules. So we'll
they do
break
have rules. That'll be another show when we talk about NAB rules and vendor rules and union rules. And maybe on another show, Kirk, maybe next year we'll talk about restaurants and our NAB dining guide recommendations. We just didn't have time.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Oh, that would make a whole show right there. Yeah. Okay, real quick. Favorite eat spot in Las Vegas? Tom, you want to give us one?
Oh, Lord. Hey, look at that. I don't know. I've been to a lot of different places. If I'm not mistaken, Smith & Wollensky is the steakhouse.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Not cheap, but oh, my God, is it good.
Chris Tobin?
Well, there's two places. The Mix at the Mandalay Bay, great restaurant. It's up top. You get to see the entire Las Vegas Strip from high above the Mandalay Bay. And then Tony Roma's in Old Vegas. Definitely, I know it sounds corny and goofy, but their selection of food, meats, everything is just, it's not the one on the Strip. This is the one in Old Vegas. Definitely check it out.
Gary, you are a partaker of food. What do you like in Vegas?
Partaker of food. I think Hugo's Cellar. I think that's Old Vegas, right? I think that's great.
Yes,
and then
it
also a newer place, Holstein's in Cosmopolitan's, a great casual restaurant. But, there are so many great restaurants in Vegas. It's like New Orleans. You almost have to go out of your way to find a bad one.
Well, yeah. I think I found a couple bad ones.
Oh, have you?
The McDonald's across from the Stratosphere is not the best.
Okay, well, I don't ever picture you, Kirk, at a McDonald's across from the Stratosphere, but that was probably some late-night story for which we probably ought to have the TWiRT TMZ video cameras following you. Maybe we should follow you.
No, Gary, but I do have some pictures of Kirk at the last NAB I went to, and, he still owes me on those.
That's probably why Kirk doesn't mess with you. You got photos on him.
I got to give full credit to Joe Talbot for my recommendation. Joe introduced me to what is supposedly Jay Leno's favorite restaurant in Vegas. Not because the food is just fabulous, but it's just a great, fun place to eat. It's an Italian place called Batista's, and it's across the street from Bally's Casino. It's for one set price, you get a whole bunch of food and some wine. Again, it's Italian. Probably ain't the best in the world, but man, it's just fun. The atmosphere is great, and the place is always busy. And of course, there's a bouncer at the door. Batista's. There's also a steakhouse that I can't remember the name of. I want to say it's the Western Golden Steer. That's it, Golden Steer. Looks like a hole in the wall in a little shopping plaza. Pretty just around the corner from the Stratosphere Hotel. That world's largest souvenir store? It's around the corner from that. But, man, you go inside there and you are set back. It's 1968 and the Rat Pack's in town. That's what that place is all about.
Yeah. I was out there once. One of the manufacturers, manufacturers, they had a little get-together, and I cannot remember the name of the place, but it's up in the mountains. And one more tip for anybody going out there. If you're planning on going out in the mountains, on the Strip during the day, it'll be 80, 85 degrees unless a cold streak comes through. Of course, all the guys from New York who were going, okay, fine, it's 85 on the Strip. We hopped in the car, shirt sleeves and all, and we went up 7,000 feet into the mountains. It was 22 degrees. With snow. Thank you. We froze to death. So bring a coat. Even though if you don't think you're going to need it, bring a coat.
Guys, we got to go. We're just about over time. Gary Kline, thank you for joining us, especially on short notice. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you at NAB. Maybe we'll do a wrap-up show.
Maybe we will. Always an honor to be asked by you guys to join the show. So thanks again for asking, and I'm always happy to hop on.
Well, thanks again. Have a great flight, and I'll see you out there. Also, Chris Tobin from Manhattan, the best-dressed engineer in radio. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll see you at the show. We should have some good times.
And Tom Ray, we will not see you at the show, but we'll be thinking of you. In fact, I'll throw $1 in a slot machine for you. How about that?
All right. And I hope you bring those winnings back and give them to me, too. Gary, always good to see you. Safe travels, everybody.
All right. Our show has been brought to you by Omnia Audio, makers of the Omnia 11 and a whole range of audio processors, the Omnia 9 and the Omnia 1 as well. Check them out on the web at omniaaudio.com. Thanks a lot to Burke and everybody else who made the show possible, to Leo and the TWiRT Network, and we'll see you guys next week live from NAB on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.